In this Bootstrap video, I'm going to be discussing some of the basic grid components that help you to design your Bootstrap site. So when you think about the basic grid, it's important to note that Bootstrap works in a 12-column grid structure. That means you can do as many as 12 columns when you design in a row, like within one row. So you can divide and have 12 different containers of content in a single row. So if you want, let's say, something to take up half of the page, it would have a column width of 6. So 6 and 6 is 12, so you would have 2 columns with a measurement of 6 to equal the full 12 column width of the site. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. So when we start building our container structure, we have our container that our content sits within. So within this container, I need to create a new row. So I'm going to create a new div, and I'm going to give it a class of row. And I'm going to wrap that div all the way around my content here. So this is the end of my container. This will now be the end of my row. I'm going to go ahead and comment that to myself. So end of row. And I'm going to write end of container just to keep myself organized. You'll notice in working with Bootstrap that you get a lot of divs and nesting divs, so it's helpful to comment at the end of all your div containers or divs just so you know what they're for. Great, so now that I put that in a row, not much is going to happen. Once I have this row, all that means is that all of this content will display within one row. So even if I hit save, if I come over here, really nothing's changed. So let me go ahead and add in some of my column classes. So I'm going to do the first one where I divide all this content into 2 columns of content. So I'm going to create a new div. I'm going to give it a class of COL to call out the column, LG for the breakpoint, this would be for the large breakpoint, and then 6. So now that I have that at the large breakpoint, anything within this div container is going to take up half of the screen. So let me cut the end of that div, and I'm going to wrap it around the first 2 paragraphs here. So I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to comment this out to myself. So end of 6 column class. I'm going to go ahead and wrap the same information around this chunk of text. So I'm going to create a div with a class of COL for column, large for breakpoint, and 6 for the amount of columns that this is going to take up at that large breakpoint. And then I'll wrap this around here. I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this so I remember what this end of the div is. You can see how I'm getting a lot of nesting divs. Now I'm going to save this, and then you see that this is now changed. So now at this large breakpoint, this will take up 2, since this is now 6 columns, this is now 6 columns. So I can see that that's going to take up half and half, so 6 plus 6 is 12. And that's how you work within the Bootstrap grid, is that if you think of this full container as 12 columns, if I want 2, that's 6. If I want 3, then it's 4. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like with 4. So I'm going to say large 4, large 4, and I'm actually going to put a new div here just so I can have some content in there. So this div now wraps around this div now wraps around that. Just so you can see that a little bit better. I'm going to hit save, and now you can see I have 3 columns of text. So to keep working with the amount of columns of text, I can just adjust those numbers. Now I need to start thinking about breakpoints again. If you remember from the last video, there are 5 breakpoints that you can use: small, medium, large, extra large, and extra small. So if I would like to say that, all right, at the large breakpoint it's 3, but when it starts getting kind of squishy, here's a small breakpoint. If this feels a little squishy, I can now change this and say, okay, at the medium breakpoint, I'd like that to go into 2 columns of text. So you can adjust that as well to make sure that this is becoming the way you would like it to be. So you can add additional breakpoints. So if I said, you know what, or if I said, I just want this to go all the way across and take up the full 12. Let's go look at that. I would do COL MD 12. This will be a little bit more visible. I copy that, paste it here and here. Hit save. So now at the large breakpoint I have 4, and then you're going to see there it pops very quickly into taking up the full 12. So you can add multiple column classes to each of your divs to adjust how it's going to respond to different breakpoints. This is a thing that you need to test often as you build your site to make sure that it is responding in the way that you want it to as you adjust across different breakpoints. So it's important to know too that you can do unequal column classes. I'm just going to show you that really quickly here. So if I said, well, I want this to take up 8 and this to take up 4, 8 plus 4, I can make that happen as well. So I can say, all right, I'm going to remove extra div that I had in there because I just want 2 columns. Let me take that out too. So now this is one big column here. Oops. I took out the wrong one. My bad. I want it to go right here. I took out the wrong ending tag. Sorry about that. So this div wraps around this big chunk of text, and then I have this smaller one that I want it to be kind of a sidebar of text. So I can say, for this unequal, I'll say at the large, take up 8 columns, and you will now take up 4. As long as they add up to 12, it's going to work. If any of your columns add up to bigger than 12, it's simply going to wrap into a next row. So you cannot make it bigger than 12 because it's going to wrap and you're going to get kind of unexpected results. So I'll hit save, and now you can see I have unequal column width. So you can design your site in that way as well. And now you can see that smaller size is going to my full 12. So play around with this and the different looks that you get when working with your column classes. So that is the basics of working with the Bootstrap grid.